It's to 1. Let's welcome our guest into the studio. It's Damian Mark Smyth, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Did anyone ever call you Smyth?
Frequently.
Yeah. I think Smyth sounds slightly posher, but maybe a bit pretentious, so stick with the Smyth. And Damian is coming to tell us about his Do Nothing book. Stop looking, start living, the simple way to a fantastic life. And it's full of really interesting theories, and we'll talk in detail about that in a moment. Let's find out a little bit about you. Where are you from originally? Where were you born?
I was originally from Reigate in Surrey.
Mm-hmm. And where were you educated? What part of the world?
That would be Reigate as well.
Brilliant. Correct answer. If you get the next one right, then you'll win £20. What about further education? Did you go to university?
I did. I went to Bournemouth. Yes.
Oh, right.
And I studied photography, and now I'm an author, and I teach about thought.
When you were at Bournemouth, for that first year, were you just idling around?
No, I was taking a lot of photographs.
Oh, right. Yeah. But there is a pleasure in that, though, isn't there?
There is absolutely a pleasure in that.
I don't think it's the same as a sort of grimy up north university where you really got to knuckle down. I mean, you can have a bit of fun in Bournemouth, can't you? All those elderly... Yeah, lovely. Now, you spent 17 years in the media industry, working with big brands, big titles and agencies. Now, what were you actually doing in that capacity?
Well, I was a graphic designer. Oh, right. I went from photography into graphic design, and then I was an art director.
Oh, right.
And, then I sort of stumbled across this understanding, and suddenly my whole world changed. I started teaching people about thought. Coming from graphic design, which was completely different. Yeah,
the world of advertising, I've got friends that work in it, they always say to me, and they're getting on now, about my age, they say it's a young man's game. I mean, you're still young, relatively speaking, but did you feel that, it was something that you wanted to give your younger years to, and it was time to move on?
No, it was complete accident. I fell into my new sort of path. But that's the way that life works sometimes.
Okay, well, tell us how that happened then. What made the change in you?
I was actually I was at a conference, and I was watching a guy called Jamie Smyth, and he was on the stage, and he said this one sentence. He said, "You're always feeling you're thinking." And I kind of hit me like a lightning bolt. And I was thinking, you're always feeling you're thinking, and it suddenly occurred to me that everything that I see as my reality, I create through my thinking first. And I'd always blamed outside circumstances, like my job or my girlfriend or the lack of money or whatever it was, and I'd always try and change those. And when I changed it, I then wondered why that didn't seem to make any difference either. So I got money, and that didn't make me happy, and I got a new girlfriend, and that didn't make me happy, and I changed my job, and that didn't make me happy either. And this was kind of the sentence that kind of made it all make sense. It's like, well, if I'm creating that, and it's not the outside world doing it, then I'm the one who's responsible, not that. And that's kind of when the light bulb went on in my head. And over the period of the next sort of few weeks and months, I learned more about it, and I thought, I've got to tell other people about this.
And you discovered the three principles. You have to explain this. This is mind, consciousness and thought. Although I think the chap who actually originally came up with this, a guy called Sid Banks, he sort of retrospectively gave those names to it. What is the three principles then, sort of rough terms?
Yeah, it's very simple. I mean, William James is the father of modern philosophy, and he said if we could come up with some principles behind the nature of our existence and thought, that would be more important to humanity than the discovery of fire. What Sid Banks basically saw when he had his epiphany moment was we're alive, we're conscious, and we think, and we create our reality via these three principles. You have to have the three together. You have to be alive, obviously, you have to be conscious, and you have to have thought. And without one of them, you can't have a reality. But with all three together, that's how we see what we see is what we get, and we do it through thinking.
Now, you've now got your own company called 3P Training.
That's right.
And you teach people about this, and I've got a little quote here. Practitioners of the three principles believe that feeling states, and indeed mental states, are self-created, as you said, through thought, and that beyond each person's limit, personal thought systems lies a vast reservoir of wisdom, insight and spiritual intelligence. It's all sort of available to be tapped if you've just got the right attitude to get there.
It's not even attitude, it's just having a little understanding. I mean, a really good example of this is if you've ever lost your car keys, and you just think about where you left them, and you keep going back to the same place to look, and then if you stop thinking about it, it just comes into your head. It's like we have that connection to wisdom.
In fact, funny you say that, there's a quote in your book from Nietzsche, all truly great thoughts are conceived by walking.
Go for a walk, best thing you could do.
Yeah, well, in fact, referring back to a mate of mine who works in the ad agency, he says whenever he's stuck at the office, he just goes for a walk around the block, and when you think of something else, and then it pops into your mind, doesn't it?
That's it.
It's the weirdest thing.
That's it.
No one person has greater access to spiritual wisdom than any other person. So people aren't special.
Nope.
Everyone has access to this.
A really good example of this is Dr. Bill Pettit, who teaches this in the States. He's a psychotherapist who sort of turned to teaching the three principles. He walked into a mental health hospital once with his two daughters, and someone was having a psychotic episode at the time, and his two young daughters were walking in hand in hand with him. The guy saw that he had two young children and came out of the psychotic episode and stopped and went over and said hello. We're always connected, no matter how bad it seems. And that was a really good example.
An extreme example. Well, the new book is called Do Nothing, Stop Looking, Start Living, The Simple Way to a Fantastic Life. Why did you decide to sort of collate all this information into a book?
Well, I really wanted to get the message out there. And I thought, again, actually, it came to me whilst going for a walk. I just thought, well, what's a good way to do it? Write a book about it. And it improved my understanding as well. So I went out and I talked to a lot of people about, the three principles, and also to people who'd never heard of the three principles, and say, when do you have your best decisions? And a lot of people came back with the same sort of thing. It's like, well, when I'm not thinking about the problem in the first place. And I just wanted to put it into a book. And the idea about do nothing came in because essentially if we're always connected to that wisdom, and most of the world spends time trying to get somewhere, trying to improve their state, change their thinking, change their situation. There's nothing to do. I go back to that, the analogy of the guy in the mental hospital. We're always connected to it. We're one thought away from mental health. We're one thought away from happiness. We just tend to sort of wallow around in our bad thoughts, and as if doing so will change them. It's like we're on this thinking merry-go-round, and we think that it's going to go somewhere. It doesn't.
How long did you work on the book then?
I wrote it in 5 months.
Oh, so quite quick. You were quite sort of focused on it then, weren't you?
Well, I didn't know that because I'd never written a book before. Because I didn't know there were rules to writing a book, and I just went and wrote it. In fact, there's a secret to writing a book. Write 500 words a day. Doesn't matter what you write.
Then it's done.
And it's done. Literally in 5 months, you'll have it done.
Now, the foreword is by Jack Pransky, who I'm sure is not familiar to many of our listeners, but he's a guy who shares a lot of your beliefs, isn't he?
That's right. And it's he wrote a book called Somebody Should Have Told Us, which has now been translated into Spanish as well, so it's a worldwide book. And I actually gave him the manuscript, and he came back and said, well, this is the book I now no longer need to write, and I'll edit it and give you a foreword, which I thought was fantastic. So I was suddenly cast from being fairly new to this understanding to an authoritarian.
And just to sort of sum up the gist of the book and what we're actually talking about here today is that we create our reality through our own thinking, don't
From
we?
the inside out.
Yeah, exactly. It's not from what is affecting us externally.
Yeah.
We can decide ourselves, can't we?
I've got a really good way of proving that as well. So let's say you're scared of spiders, okay, and I have a spider with me, and you'll look at that spider and you'll be scared.
Yeah.
You have that feeling of scariness.
Yes.
Now, if I've got three other people with me, and one of them happens to be a spider expert, one of them happens to be blind, and the other one happens to be a meditating monk, all those three other people, they're not getting the same feelings as you. But I've got the spider and I've got it with me. So the only way you can be actually having those feelings is you have to be having the thought about it. So it works inside out.
You create it within yourself.
Inside out.
And this affects many things that affect all of us. Stress, anxiety, general fears that we have.
Inside out.
Yeah, yeah. Actions are the result of the belief that we put into our own thoughts.
So again, we're swimming around in our own thinking, we're in our anxious thinking, as if there's something we could do about it. It's like we're in a sea of thought and we're splashing around. If we just get calm and do nothing, answers will come to us. It's that connection again to the wisdom that we all have, and why. Actually, you don't need to change your thinking, you don't need to do anything with it, you don't need to alter it, you just need to understand where it's coming from. We're the creator of it. And it's like moods and thoughts are weather systems. Another one will come along. You don't have to change the weather.
Yeah, it is interesting stuff. I mean, I have a similar view whenever I have to do something that's involved, talking to a large group of people or something, which people may have been nervous about. I always think, well, why worry? I mean, what's there to worry about at the end of the day? And that relaxes you anyway, doesn't it? And suppose, and from that sort of base point, you can, be confident, I suppose.
What's the worst that could happen to you?
Exactly. Nothing.
Attacked by my own thinking.
Now, let's talk a little bit about addiction, because you say that the emphasis is on the drug, not thinking about the drug. What do you mean by that, exactly?
So for instance, I have a couple of friends who are alcoholics, and they've gone on a 12-step program. What they're essentially doing is they're saying that the drug has a power. So again, it's an outside-in influence. Now, if you see that actually it's your thinking creating that. And I agree that, some people are biologically, more prone to having a bad effect of alcohol. But if you see that, and you know that your wisdom is basically telling you, why would I want to put something that's poisoning me, which is alcohol is poison, in me in the first place, and they see it with such clarity, the power has been taken away from the drug and actually been given to you again, because you're the one having the insight, essentially. It's like, well, why would I want something that's hurting me? I don't need it. And so rather than then spending every day focusing on the drug as having the power, you're then bringing the power back inside. It's a huge difference.
Now, the book is full of stories and anecdotes, and actually reading the reviews on Amazon, many of the people that have very, very positive reviews on Amazon say there's so many stories in there, and they feel that you've touched them through them. There's one about a Greek friend of yours who's obviously it's in turmoil financially at the moment, but you mentioned the children of this individual who look on it in a different way. Don't just explain that. Absolutely.
So Greece is in turmoil with big financial problems, and I've had a friend out there who... they basically had to move. They had to get rid of the business and move. But the children were saying, does that mean we can be homeschooled? And does that mean we can go and travel and all this sort of stuff? And of course, adults see it in a different way. They think of the problems. And children who are much more connected to this. I mean, you don't see children coming back from school, getting really depressed about their day, and they just kind of get on with it.
Yeah.
And so it was just like a different way of looking at it. But I guess the key thing here is it's not a case of reframing thought. It's not a case of changing thought. It's not a case of doing anything with it. It's kind of a bit more upstream from that. It's a case of seeing where it's being created in the first place. So if you see that if you've got anxious thinking or fearful thinking, and you just see that you're the one doing it, it's kind of like if you put your hand in a flame, why would you want to go back and put it... You'd stop. As soon as you see that, you'd stop. It's like, I'm doing it. And that's kind of it. It's just the power falls away. There's no need to sort of splash around in it. You just go, I'm the one who's doing it. I'm the one doing it.
I mean, you take a basic sort of phobia of flying. I mean, there'll be a person who maybe flies a plane, a pilot who has absolutely zero fear of flying, and someone who's so petrified they won't get on a plane. And yet that entire scenario has been created within their own mind.
Yeah, and if you could just show them that that's where it's being created, it's not even... You don't even talk about the thinking. I mean, when I do stress management coaching, and when someone comes to see me, I don't talk about their situation at all. I just talk about thought. I just talk about where it comes from. And I might even talk about a story, say, when was the last time you were in a supermarket and you ended up pushing someone else's trolley? Isn't it interesting how we can all get lost in our own thinking? They go, oh yeah, I've done that. Or when was the last time you lost your car key? Oh yeah, I've done that. So we're talking about the nature of thought and where it's created. As soon as they see that, as soon as they see that one point that they're creating it from the inside out, that is sometimes enough for them to go, I'm creating the anxiety, I'm creating the fear, I'm creating the addiction, I'm creating it. It's all created inside out, and that can be, it's
liberating, isn't it?
It's the aha moment. It's that they just see that one thing, and that's enough. There's not that much else to do because they'll keep on seeing it.
Your book starts by you saying walking past a playground and hear the children, laughing and crying and having fun in an outside environment, and that innocence is what we all want to recapture, isn't it?
And some people I meet still have it. And it's because they're not bogged down in their thought about how I should look to other people, or what other people might think of me, or all of those things. It's all self-created. It's nothing to do, life doesn't have an opinion. People who have cancer, people say, it's the worst thing that could ever happen in the world. I have a friend whose best friend got cancer, and the last 6 months of his life was the best 6 months he ever had. Yeah. Because he said he could finally be himself. Life it's almost like it's irrelevant unless you have a thought about it.
It's funny you should mention that, because I was listening to an interview with Wilco Johnson from Dr. Feelgood, who's been given, I think, 8 months to live, and he said he's never enjoyed life more. Everything is so vivid. I mean, he's not in pain at the moment, but everywhere he goes, he finds it wonderful. He's immersed in the surroundings in a way he never knew before. He's just appreciating things because time's running out, but we should be appreciating things because we don't know when time's going to run out, do we?
Absolutely. I mean, we have no idea whether, an asteroid's going to hit the Earth tomorrow and we're all going to die. It doesn't matter. The fact is that if it's not even about living in the moment, it's just about seeing that you're the creator of your own experience, no matter what that is, and that includes happy as well. That does include happy too. You're doing it.
And this idea doesn't relate directly to any sort of religion or spirituality or anything like that?
Nothing like that at all. I mean, the guy, Sid Banks, who kind of, I say discovered it, uncovered it, he was a ninth grade educated welder from Scotland, and he was, really unhappy, and he saw a psychologist, actually, at an event, who said, you're not insecure, you just think you are. Now, he just had that enlightening moment. He saw that everything is created through thought. And he couldn't even spell the word psychologist, let alone, talk to one. And he said to his wife and his mother-in-law, we're going to be travelling the world talking about this, and they thought he'd gone mad, and that's exactly what he did. And he wrote books about it. The Enlightened Gardener's a fantastic book, and it's an allegory. So it's the problem with talking about this explicitly is, don't listen to the words, listen to what's sort of between the words. It's like the freedom in the prison bars is the space in between. So, and I say that in the book, it's like I'll point to where this is coming from, but it's like a signpost is not the place. It's pointing to where it's coming from. So I point to the fact that it's inside out, and I talk about the three principles. But essentially, it doesn't matter what the words say. It's alluding people to the fact that they're creating their reality from the inside out. They're the ones responsible. And that's kind of it. It's very simple.
It's divided, as most books are, into different chapters, and let's just have a brief word on each of these different chapters. You start off with relationships. Are you talking about relationships with our loved ones, with families in particular?
Every type of relationship in business, we get in. So if two people are having an argument, they tend to get those feelings inside of them, those sort of the butterflies in the stomach feelings, and they think it's the other person doing it on purpose. So they say, you're pressing my money buttons or whatever it is. Now, it's not the case. It's like they're creating their feelings from inside. And sometimes the best thing to do in an argument, if we're arguing from a place where we're in a low state of mind, it's not a good idea to carry on doing it. Say, okay, time out. Let's, go for a walk, and let's come back and talk about it later. And you can have two different conversations about the same subject matter. Couples who have a conversation on holiday tend to sort of work through things. Couples who have conversation when they're late, they're tired, they've just come home from work, tends to go badly. But again, that's because we see what state of mind we're in, and don't make decisions when you're if you had no sleep and you're really in a bad way, don't go making life-changing decisions.
No. Or text.
Yeah. Or text,
Let's move on to business. Of course, a crucial part of many people's lives. In what way can you operate this in a business environment?
So, if you do, let's say if you're doing like leadership training, but you're showing leaders or anyone in business that actually they're creating their whole reality from the inside out. So all of their relationships that they're having with their customers, with their staff, if they see that they're doing it, there's less blame attached, there's more responsibility, so that they'll actually start to listen more. So a really good example of this is where this has been taught in the States. Companies who do this, they say, our meetings just go more smoothly. People will actually listen, and because there's less stuff going on in their own head about, he's only doing that because of this, and they're actually listening to the real. There's a really good story about this. There was a very senior exec in a company in the States, and he had this training, and after the first meeting, after he'd had it, people said, what did you do to him? Did you brainwash him? Because whereas before he would jump on someone and say, that's not good enough, whatever. At the end of someone stood up and did a presentation. He said, not only did he tell them, he thanked them, but he also said, he gave him really positive criticism, said, actually, I think the message you were trying to get through is this. And the guy said, well, actually, yeah, that was. And he said, well, what you need to do is you need to improve your presentation skills. He saw so much more. So, BAE Systems in the States has their own three principles division now.
That's interesting.
And it's being taught in the prison systems. It's spreading slowly, but it spreads from one person to another because you have to have your own insight about it. I could give you the process of how it works. And, of course, because you create it from your reality from the inside out, it's only what you see. Yeah. So you could translate that. It's like, if I'm speaking... It's
individual, isn't it? You also mentioned parenting. I think you've got a couple of children yourself,
I have two little girls,
yeah. Has your relationship with them changed slightly, or did this begin before you had them?
Children really see it. They really see it from if you say to them, you're creating your world through your thinking, and you give them examples, so my eldest, Alana, I said to her, so imagine your best friend at school gets hurt in the playground. And she said, yeah. And I said, how would you feel? And she said, oh, God, I can feel it now. It's like, Johnny's hurt. I said, is he actually hurt? And she said, no, I'm thinking it. And I said, well, there you go. And she said, wow, those feelings are so strong. And I said, isn't that amazing?
You also mentioned finances, which is something that preys on many people's minds, particularly at the moment. How could you actually... Well, you're not really into generating money, are you? But I suppose it's changing your relationship with money, isn't it?
Absolutely. So there's a guy in the States who's got $6 billion, and he wakes up every day thinking this is the day I'm going to lose it. There are people that have... There's a guy in the States, again, who gave away all his money, and he lives just off the land, and he's incredibly happy and incredibly well-liked and respected.
In fact, just off the back of that, I was watching a programme recently on television about lottery winners, and there were a couple that won an enormous amount, and they've given away a lot of their money, whilst, keeping a couple of million, and they seem blissfully happy.
Brilliant. Happy lottery winners remain happy, unhappy lottery winners remain unhappy. It's not the money.
Who do you think would benefit most from a book like this?
Well, this was tricky when it came to marketing it, because I said it's kind of about everyone, because everyone creates a reality through their thought. We're trying to get it into businesses, because the more senior you get into businesses, it filters down. They sort of say, well, wouldn't it be better if we did realise that we're creating our reality from the inside out? That actually, it's about us. It's about how, that's why companies like Google and Apple are really embracing this kind of, I'd say, thinking. They get their staff to spend more time doing their own projects. It's like, be happy. Spend more time on yourself, and then the rest will happen. You'll end up wanting to work for us, and then the work will come naturally. So it's aimed at everybody, but I would say, anyone who's unhappy or stressed, it's a really quick way to get over that hurdle. Well,
as I said earlier on, the reviews on Amazon are fantastic. Reaction has been really excellent. Damian Smyth has condensed the 3 principles into a straightforward, easy-to-comprehend, fabulous read, and you've got a lot of 5-star reviews on there, I know. You must be pleased with that.
I am, actually.
Yeah. And,
although that's outside in.
And what's next for you, then? Are you doing another book, or are you just going to sort of push this further?
I'm actually writing 2 more books. I'm writing one which is actually an allegory as well, which has some of the stories in there, but in a fictional way. And I'm also writing another book which goes deeper into Do Nothing. It's called Do Nothing Again. And it's more based on the sort of the spiritual aspect of it, which is that we're actually perfect as human beings. We're using the process perfectly, mind, consciousness and thought. We're creating our reality perfectly, and there's nothing to change. There really is nothing to change.
And I would say, if anyone's listening now who thinks that Damian is a chancer, a dodgy character, which he isn't, all profits from the book go to the NSPCC, which is a wonderful gesture. Why did you choose that particular charity to give the profits?
10% of profits.
I beg your pardon, 10% for profit.
Yeah. The NSPCC, we actually did the book tour in aid of the NSPCC. Going back to the question you said earlier, actually, it would benefit children if children get this at an early age. We've actually applied for funding to take this into the education system. If children get this at an early age, the rest of their life, they'll know. In 100 years' time, I think this will be part of the course. We'll know that we create our reality from the inside out.
It would benefit society.
Very much so. Very much so.
Brilliant. Well, I think it's really interesting. Looking forward to reading the book in total. It's called Do Nothing. You can get hold of it on Amazon, clearly.
Yes, and in Waterstones. You can order it in Waterstones as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming today, Damian. Lovely to see you.
My pleasure.
That's Damian Mark Smyth, the author of Do Nothing.